Protesters continue to voice outrage over fatal police shootings of unarmed black men. This often puts black officers in a challenging situation. Protesters sometimes single them out at rallies, labeling them sellouts and Uncle Toms. But many of these officers personally experience racism and understand the rage. But they themselves find they have to balance that experience with their own sense of duty. Police Lieutenant Leronne Armstrong understands that dilemma, and he's a veteran of the Oakland, California Police Department, and he joins us from Oakland. Thank you so much for being here, Leronne. It's nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
It is really an interesting dilemma. I'm sure that you've had to grapple with it for quite some time. Can you sort of describe, we have some very poignant video of you out with protesters and they're really in your face, they're hurling insults. Can you describe what's going through your head, your emotional response to being in a situation like that?
I think first you want people to understand that you understand the reason why they're protesting and you don't disagree. But the fact of the matter, you still want them to also understand that you have a duty as a police officer to do your job. And as long as people are exercising their First Amendment rights without committing violent acts or vandalism, you're okay with what they're doing. And so, you know, it's always going through your mind that I wish I could express that.
I'm looking at a picture right now and someone's walking right next to you. They've got their hand out, or their arm outstretched finger pointed at you just inches from your face. How are you able to show restraint in a moment like that?
I think we want to make sure that people understand that we don't want to become the focus, right? We don't want any more issues between law enforcement and protesters. And so you just want to make sure that the protesters are safe, that your officers are safe, but also you don't want to react in a way that might bring the spotlight even more intensely on law enforcement.
Are you able to communicate with them in that moment to say, listen, I understand what you're doing, to kind of bring the temperature down, or you just have to maintain, if you will, your game face as a police officer?
Well, you try to just maintain your game face because you know that most people are emotional and they're not prepared to really have dialogue. And so you maintain that. And there are instances where you can't have a moment to say to people that I truly understand why you're out here. I understand that you're exercising your rights. But to say negative things to me or insult me is just not fair.
Are you able to, or did you have the opportunity to communicate with your white colleagues on the police force who might not understand the dilemma that you find yourself in, or the complaints of the African American community that feels like they've been unfairly and unjustly treated by law enforcement? Are you able to sort of verbalize the issue for your colleagues?
Yes, I think my colleagues understand the importance of diversity in law enforcement. And so we consistently have conversations about having different officers from different backgrounds and different cultures within law enforcement and the important role that that plays. And so I think our officers are now beginning to see the important role that having minority partners right next to them play, because they can ask those questions as to how emotional are you about this? How do you feel about this? Make me understand why people are so angry about these things. And we're able to provide them that kind of insight, which I think is important.
Do you think that there is something that many of these protesters who are full of anger and rage don't understand that might calm them down if they had a better appreciation of?
I think they should understand that, especially the Oakland Police Department, we're working hard to be more transparent, and that we're willing to sit down and have productive conversations with anybody that feels like we could do better. I think that's the point that we're missing in all of the protests, is that there is no discussion about where we want to move in the future to create a better relationship between law enforcement and the community. And I think that's the dialogue that needs to happen.
Before I let you go, can you tell me how the cold-blooded assassination of Wenjun Liu and Rafael Ramos, the two Brooklyn police officers that were shot just this last Saturday, what kind of effect that's had on your colleagues in the police department there in Oakland?
I think it's had a chilling effect on law enforcement across the country. I think we all recognize that this was a tragic incident, a senseless incident that shouldn't have occurred. And that it goes back to the need for us to really sit down and have productive conversations between law enforcement and the communities we serve. Because officers shouldn't be afraid, but community members shouldn't be afraid as well. And so we have to recognize that this was tragic and nobody wins from incidents like this. And so I think this is a calling to everybody to go, all lives matter. Black lives matter as well as law enforcement lives matter. And we need to have better communication and try to come up with better solutions than resulting to violence.
Lieutenant Leronne Armstrong, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much, and I wish you a very happy holiday.
Same to you. Thank you for having me.